Yeah, this compression topic, it's been fun to see how many people are quite interested in this. I've been invited to give the talk all over the U.S. It's traveled from the East Coast to the West Coast, from Texas to Chicago. I've given the talk in Italy and in China. There are just an endless supply of people hungry to learn more about signal processing in general, and I think for some reason compression most of all.
I can't help but notice you said Hungary and Italy. Did you hit any good restaurants up in Italy?
Oh yes, and in fact, maybe other people do this too, but it's the first time I was able to spend time in Italy, and so restaurants were a big part of what I was doing, and unfortunately I found one really good restaurant within walking distance of my hotel, and so I probably made a mistake, but I probably had 3 meals there when I could have had 3 different restaurants, but that's
Right.
how good it was. It was insane.
What did you have? Was it pasta or?
Yeah, so I'm partial, and this certainly doesn't need to be in the blog, but I'm quite partial to gnocchi. I really love gnocchi, and
Oh, yeah.
gnocchi in the States is so often overcooked and rubbery, and this was just magic every time. So I had gnocchi 3 different ways,
Magic.
and a good glass of really affordable wine.
Yep.
It's great. I'm ready to go back now.
I want
How
to go
long
back.
is this mic cable?
Which actually, that brings me right into another topic, which I always ask people. When I was an intern at a few studios and in broadcast, actually, a lot of the mixers that I would intern with would always drink black coffee. Now, do you have a certain session food that you always go to? When you're on a session, you always eat this food because it's either quick or whatever reason.
I don't, but I understand that ritual. So I'm a freak in our industry in that I don't drink coffee. It doesn't mean I don't like caffeine, but I take my caffeine in a bubbly bottle of carbonated toxins rather than coffee. So, for session work, I actually try to eat with the band. I think it's essential to take breaks so that everyone can rest their ears and rest their mind and get their head out of the project so that they can walk back in and make good music. And so to me, it's the most important thing is the relationships and the vibe, and to make sure I'm in sync with what the band's trying to do. So if we aren't all fed up with each other yet, and sometimes that is the case, I'll just eat whatever the band eats. And if you're working with lactose intolerant vegetarians, then you eat lactose-free vegetables.
All right, so I guess that brings me to a next question. What's the weirdest food you ever seen an artist eat during a recording session?
That's legal.
That's legal.
Well, so the only bizarre thing that comes to mind is I worked for a while with someone who even though he is an adult, he really, really, really likes peanut butter. And he was willing to make himself and for everyone else in the studio peanut butter sandwiches. He took great pleasure in that. And he would put things in it that I wasn't interested in, bananas and other stuff.
That's a very common thing with peanut butter, actually.
Yeah. So he's quite the peanut butter connoisseur, and he had to be the certain brand. He loved the certain kind of bread. Yep, classy peanut butter in the studio at 4 a.m.
With or without the crust?
He would sometimes cut off crust for people, but he was a crust eater, and I'm willing to eat the crust. But I see the benefit.
Yep. How about the cut? Diagonal, straight across, or completely in half?
How about cutting it in 4s?
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, in half and in half. You get the finger food thing going.
Yeah, I guess. Because, that's always a big thing. When you're a little kid, you got to have your peanut butter and jelly, or in just this case, peanut butter cut a certain way. If not, that's it.
Right.
Your whole day's ruined.
You got to cry and stamp your feet. Yeah, he was just like that, actually.
All right, let's do 5 questions. This is sort of the speed round, and our earlier podcast, Dr. Moylan really surprised us with a few things. You ready?
I suppose.
All right. Question 1. Favorite mic on a kick drum?
Favorite mic on a kick drum might be an RE20.
RE20? You're the second person that said that.
It's neglected around here and in this time. RE20 and 421 are starting points. In truth, I use D112s and D12Es most of the time, but RE20, when it's right, it's great.
All right. So question 2. Favorite mic on a snare drum?
Can I have two answers to that? Because I never put one mic on the snare drum.
Okay,
I'm
that's
already
fine.
bending the rules. I almost always start with a small diaphragm cardioid condenser and a Shure SM57 duct taped together on a single mic clip on a single mic stand on the snare drum. I try to line up the capsules so they get the same sound as close as possible. If I could make them exactly coincident, I would. So that small diaphragm cardioid condenser, which always has a pad, is a KM84, a KM184, an AKG 451. One of those high-end, sort of exaggerated, overly bright, overly full, extra lows, extra highs kind of thing. And then I put both of those microphones on the snare drum almost every time, and that gives me the comfort, the luxury of going into the control room and pushing up individual faders and saying, which one sounds right for this tune on this drum in this room today? It could be just the 57, it could be just the just the condenser, or some mixture of both.
Favorite stereo pair? I stumped him. Come on, it's supposed to be quick.
Which one's stereo? Is that 5, 3, 2 microphones?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I would have to say the stereo pair I put up the most is a pair of U87s as room mics.
Question 4. A lot of recording engineers talk about the magic dust inside a recording, which makes it really sparkle. What is magic dust to you?
Magic dust is often... He had to bleep that, but that was funny.
Yep. That's a great point.
I think magic dust is often a bit of bright reverb and or a bit of distortion. I think some of the magic dust that I think of in recordings is this other layer of texture that sometimes comes and goes on vocals and snares, or sometimes gets draped over the entire recording, and that can just be a really gorgeous, ear-tingling reverb that lingers around, or it could be a tasty bit of distortion.
All right, last question. So everybody has mostly everybody has some sort of recording tradition or ritual. When I go into recording studio, I like to wear a blue shirt. Don't know why, just happen to. Do you have any sort of like superstition when you go into a recording studio?
And I have a lot of blue shirts now that I think about it, but yeah, no superstition at all. I mean, for me, the thing I think about is I'm trying to do as much pre-production and pre-planning as I can. So if it's a room I've never been in, I'm wondering, is the assistant good? Does the console work on all the modules? If it's a band I've never worked with, I'm wondering, what it's going to take to keep them happy and comfortable and creative. So I do obsess about these things, but I can't figure out how to invest the power in my shirt to make all that stuff go better.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I don't think I'm a superstitious guy. I'm not afraid when driving down the road on a clear day to say, wow, the traffic's been great and the weather looks great. I do not believe I have the power to make suddenly the traffic stop and the rain come. I'm not a superstitious guy, I don't think. But I do have rituals.
You do?
Well, sure.
I mean, share?
They're nothing so profound as mantras or yoga, but they're things that I think a lot of us do. A lot of recording engineers have a little bit of obsessive compulsive disorder, and we all rein that in as much as we need to. So there are certain things, certain orders to how things are done that I'm sure I do every time. I worked with an engineer who was incapable of working with only one color Sharpie. He liked to label up the board with the drums were one color and the guitars were another and the vocal was its own color and so on. I'm not that obsessive compulsive, but I admit I have elements of it.
Yeah, actually I have elements of the different color Sharpie just because I like to be, believe it or not, I'm more organized when I work than I am at home. I don't even know why. If you go into my room, it's just like amazingly completely messy, and I don't even know how I get work done at home. But when I'm at work or in a recording session, it's just like colored Sharpies, make sure everything's neat, clean up everything, and.
Oh, I hear that. I mean, the ability to work fast translates directly into quality of production. That if we slow down what the talent is doing, we're interfering with the quality of their performance. So I think it's totally consistent that we might be a little bit disorganized in our regular lives, but overly organized in our professional lives, because we are responsible for making this stuff happen, and things that go wrong have to be found and fixed fast.
The book is called Sound Effects: Unlocking the Creative Potential of Recording Studio Effects by Focal Press, and the author is Alex U. Case. Alex, thank you very much for participating in this podcast.
It's my pleasure. Thanks to everyone for listening.
Chapter 6 of Alex Case's book, Sound Effects, devotes nearly 40 pages to compression, with 14 figures and a discography of important examples of compression in pop and rock recordings. It's a great place to learn everything there is to know about compressors, how they work, what to listen for, how to select the right compressor for the job, and how to treat them into the sound effect you want to hear. For more information, go to www.focalpress.com.